And then, of course, there are all the offerings out there with regard to gaining exposure for specific cryptocurrencies, especially Bitcoin. You manage one of the bigger ones, one of the bigger funds out there. Other providers also have Bitcoin-related ETFs. Just how important is this model becoming for advisors to maybe allocate towards cryptocurrencies?
Well, we're seeing a lot of advisors have started that educational journey around what is Bitcoin and what is the role that it could play in portfolios. And I think what's really spurred this along is two things. One is their clients are asking them about Bitcoin, particularly millennial clients who have been digital asset native. And then secondly, in this environment where you have more global uncertainty, there's more interest in assets that behave differently from traditional assets like gold and like Bitcoin that are a bit more of diversifiers in a portfolio.
Institutions are selling Bitcoin. Governments are looking to accumulate Bitcoin. Inflation is dropping. Energy prices are dropping. The Fed is about to cut interest rates. All this good news, yet Bitcoin isn't pumping. Is exactly why you'll know by the end of this video whether or not you should sell all of your altcoins for Bitcoin. Now, yes, that might be a little dramatic, but what I'm referring to is simply going to be the price action of Bitcoin every single June, also known as June gloom. And this is because usually every single May, we have this entire hyped up rally. Of course, alongside tax returns, people anticipate upside pressure in May, resulting in a phrase, sell in May and walk away. A lot of influencers out there, a lot of creators, a lot of educators, a lot of advisors believe that summer is going to be bullish. But is this true? Well, let's look at history. Going over the last 3 years, just to June of 2022. This was when we were entering a bear market. However, there was a massive drawback between May, of course, the 1st of June, all the way until August of 2022. Massive downside, a 44% pullback in June of 2022. But even when we zoom in May of 2023, there was still yet a 12% pullback in May leading into June of 2023. 2024, a 25% pullback running from May against once again into June. And right now we are about to enter June again, which would tell us if this time around Bitcoin were to follow the same price action, let's just go for an average and say 15% pullback here, you're looking at a $93,000 Bitcoin. Now, once again, I don't necessarily expect that to happen. However, with all of this good news coming out and Bitcoin's price performance being pretty mid, you got to ask yourself, what's going to be the next catalyst for Bitcoin to skyrocket, especially altcoins?
Well, today I had the founder of Aave speak about this directly, and here's what he had to say about alt season.
And the other thing to follow is the interest rates. So every single drop in interest rates should also increase the pricing of and valuations of crypto as well, because that's the cheaper the capital becomes, the more fluid it becomes, and it typically goes to other opportunities. So obviously, like when rates are coming down on fixed income, the money goes elsewhere. It goes to alternative finance, it goes to DeFi, it goes to crypto, and also it might go back to equities as well, depending on the market conditions. So I think that's something that's going to happen, and I think that the Fed, they can't keep up the high rates for too long, because that can keeping high interest rate for long enough, that stalls the economy and creates stagnation. And that's the worst enemy that basically can happen. So I do think that over the next 12 months, not maybe for the next couple of months for foreseeable future, but for the next 12 months, we're going to see interest rates coming down. They're coming down by ECB in Europe. They're also coming down by Bank of England in the UK. And I think the same will follow in the US as well. And every single cut of interest rate will create additional flux of liquidity into crypto as well. I think that's something worth watching quite a lot.
And I have to completely agree. It's going to really be based on the Federal Reserve interest rate cut, which, if you look at the screen here, is looking to be sometime in September this year that we get the first 25 basis point rate cut. And that's going to be because of Donald Trump's tariff policy. Been back and forth. We were hoping to see the rate cuts as early as June, but with all of the extensions, with the China tariffs, with now by Wednesday, you have to see most of the trade deals or policies or proposals at the administration's desk. We could see a lot of volatility moving over to the summer between these trade deals. Now, I expect us to do well over the summer. The worst I would expect us to pull back to would be, of course, the futures market here at roughly $96,000. And that is on the daily. $96,000 on the daily, potentially even all the way down to $91,700, which was created at the end of May. Now, that seems a little dramatic, very well could be. And I'm not saying you want to bet on that position. You just want to be aware of the situation. I expect right now the tariff policies and the interest rates to literally drive the entire market. So unless we get clarity in the next 2 weeks, which let me know in the comments, do you believe Donald Trump is going to give us clarity on these markets within the next 2 weeks? Because I, for one, even though I am, obviously you guys know which way I lean on here, I don't expect clarity or anything to get done anytime soon. I expect the Feds to hold interest rates probably until September, unless something out of left field takes place that breaks these markets. And again, that very well could happen. But ultimately, the perspective here is what happens in the next leg up. And I believe you're going to see Bitcoin continue to outperform. Will finally potentially break $3,000 to $3,200. So if you want to play the downside here, I think the minimum amount of risk is to rotate a lot of your profits into Bitcoin. I honestly, truly believe that is the least amount of risk you can possibly take on right now. Because if Bitcoin were to peak out, right? Let's say Bitcoin were to peak out here at 104 and needs to come back down to 91, 96K to fill that gap. Altcoins will be decimated. And if we don't see Bitcoin really break above 108K or hold this position and break out in the next couple of weeks, it is becoming much more likely that we will see a retest and altcoin will be smacked as Bitcoin dominance continues higher. So if you want to take a little bit of less risk on in the portfolio, personally, this is just my opinion. It's not financial advice. I think being heavily allocated to Bitcoin is one of the best possible things you can do right now, as we already saw a pretty decent rotation of altcoins. However, if you want to catch that glimpse, if you want to catch those altcoins, most of us, we got in at the bottom of this market. So we're up 2x, or at least up some certain percentage in altcoins here, as we were picking up in January, February, March, screaming to buy under $80,000 Bitcoin. If you're not in altcoins yet, I believe waiting for a better opportunity or waiting for a dollar cost average entry point could be very, very ideal as we wait for this next major move. So until then, guys, hit that button, turn on these notifications, because institutions are buying more Bitcoin than ever. You see more accumulation than ever, even in Ethereum, with over 20 companies adding it to its strategic reserve, which means the supply shock that is coming is being created. And whether that takes 3 months until the Federal Reserve decides to finally pivot, it's an inevitable process that the government is going to print more money, which is going to cause more fear, which is going to cause more capital rotation and easy liquidity entering back into the altcoin and crypto markets. Guys, let me know your Bitcoin price prediction for the end of summer, and I'll see you in the next video.